Morbius, Werewolf by Night, Rebalance updates, as well as something coming for Mr. Sinister. Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to a freshly squeezed Saturday video. I've kind of like shifted my schedule around. There's some stuff that was meant to come out today, but I wanted to kind of like cover some of these various topics. There's also been an update on the side quest key situation. Compensation will be coming towards the end of the cycle. I'll probably cover this a bit more on Monday's MCN, but I thought this was probably an important video to talk about what's coming next. So a bit of an update from the Rebalance team. First of all, October's first edition, The Legion of Monsters, was Morbius, designed by a designed to be a high damage dealer that revisited classic science utilities such as power and regen control. We were pleased to see him immediately make an impact as a strong attacker, especially during the sugar pill decay meta. Defensively, Morbius can catch attackers off guard with unblockable medium dash, but we're seeing him effectively countered by a healthy spread of champions. Overall, we're happy with how Morbius landed and will be staying as is. So that's good news, especially if you're kind of worried that the champion might be changing. This is something that I think a lot of us are very much well aware of. If you spend your money in game, you want to make sure that the champion that's new to the game, that if you're investing rank up materials in, is going to stay the same, because at the end of the day, you lose those rank up materials on a champion you think is going to be god tier and then is kind of nerfed down to be like a demigod tier or something like that. And that becomes frustrating to the player base, the same way that anything gets buffed, is overtuned, and then you're like, great, well I've just lost materials, and kabam, on giving out rank down tickets. It's happened in the past. Not as recent as people might think, but definitely with stuff like Craven and Baron Zemo, but that's different. That's a different case of affairs, because the champion is still pretty much usable. It's just a case of like a what was it, the suppression to a point of, hey, the enemy can't move at you, you've just kind of like rooted it in place, and you just spamming it with kind of like bleeds. It's beautiful, but you know, it's not sustainable from Caban's perspective. Werewolf by Night's on the chopping block next. The second spooky champion from October in Werewolf by Night came howling into the Battleground. Clever wording, I like it. As a threatening defender with strong attacker potential in the right matchups or meta. Looking at you, Polka Dot Power and Power Shield meta. As a defender, we're seeing players effectively counter his threats with ability power rate control, as well as countering the rupture debuffs directly. As an attacker, Werewolf by Night had a few cosmic defenders as targets in Gore the God Butcher, Adam Warlock and Hulkling, and we're happy with his effectiveness in those matchups. No changes incoming for Werewolf, which is great. I picked this up as a 7-star. I haven't had time to do a lot of kind of rank ups and not retuning, but kind of reassessing. I think that's one problem I think a lot of players have, is kind of making decisions about what is right, what is wrong. There's 260 champions nearly in this game. Trying to make effective decisions is always difficult, and trying to figure out a purpose for them, again, is always difficult. Who knows, with these Karina challenges, it's great to look back at old champions, but when you're reinvesting your rank up materials back into some of those old champions for certain things, I mean, give a good example, like for Karina's challenge one, where you've got to have, it's not a case you've got to, it's kind of like, it makes it more, I wouldn't say easier, but it makes it better for you on damage output to have at least your Iron Man, which I think a lot of us would have an Iron Man ranked up because of the recent buff. Black Widow, Hawkeye, again debatable. Hawkeye is still great, obviously, it was great from the buff, but there's a very specific ceiling to his skill level, which is a fundamental problem. The Black Widow is not exactly the Black Widow that you would necessarily take into fights, so that creates a bit of a problem. Although, as I said, one of the things, Baron Zemo, only Baron Zemo on your team, well, I can get a 6-star, 5-star, 4-star, but essentially, like, I'd be ranking up a 5-star version and ascending. Not too much of an expense, but if you don't have some of the champions as I've listed above, then again, it becomes a problem, because you're like, oh, great, I've got all these lovely rank up materials. Am I going to go in with a rank 1 Black Widow? No, you're probably not. Am I going to just use like, I don't know, Iron Man for it, maybe, but that's not the point of the content, and that's not the point of bringing the champions in. Anyway, back to the subject at hand, and of course the point there was about you investing your materials to rank up materials and finding that champions change, which can be very disappointing. This is something that I'm really excited about. Mr. Sinister has always been that champion that I felt could do a lot, and I did like something where he can be good in incursions, and I would really love to see down the line a buff. It is now happening. So, with both of these champions staying as is, we're going to be releasing an update for Mr. Sinister. This update will be focused on leaning into his heavy debuff pause loop and giving him more power as an attacker. Mr. Sinister's timeline will look like 43.1 March plus 44.0 April beta builds, and with a full release looking at 44.1. Yeah, and that reminds me, like, I'm pretty certain there's a video on the channel of me utilizing, if I put in like Mr. Sinister, if I could spell Mr. Sinister, testing Mr. Sinister in incursions. So this was 20. Wow, okay, that's COVID times. Yeah, COVID times. This video right here. This was interesting because it was like, it wasn't too bad, but things have changed. If you can, for whatever reason, pause that debuff degen where you've kind of got the champion stunned, and also you've got proud degen, draining degen, you can find yourself literally getting the enemy just there doing nothing while you've just literally debuff. It could be a very sustainable and decent champion to use in that content. Could be. Not saying it is or isn't. It could go a bit further and beyond in incursions, because Mr. Sinister, I always hope that Mr. Sinister could be like the next, like, Aegon type character. Look, I'm not, bear with me on that particular point. Let me kind of like just expand on that. So this is a 60 signature, and I'd love to get a 200 signature for this. It's just with stats and kind of like things like this. Like, the more that you defeat certain types of different classes, especially in content like incursions where you face off against different classes, questing's very difficult because you're probably facing against 5 or 6 champions per quest, and in that you're able to kind of like you might face 2 skills, 1 science, 1 mystic, 1 cosmic, and 1 mutant in one like path. If you're doing content like Necropolis, which I'm not necessarily saying, hey, go use Mr. Sinister in Necropolis, but if you're looking at something like incursions or a particular thing where you've got to keep going, keep fighting, then you'll get these extras per persistency. So, you know, if you defeat 2 skills, 20 sciences, it's more applicable for something like incursions than it would be for something like, you know, questing. But it can be helpful in the type of like stats and things like that. But as I said, like, the main thing about like using this champion in incursions, which I personally like, is how when you charge your heavy attack, it says pause the duration of damaging debuffs, stuns, concussions, power leech on the opponent. And for something like incursions, especially when you start off, you do a parry heavy and you channel it, you're able to then keep that degen on longer, keeping the enemy champion suppressed and have a lot of fun. The same way that if you see tomorrow's video, perma stunning with Hulk in incursions, and you'll know exactly what I mean when it comes to like really fun cheese option to take into, depending on your hacks, to kind of do a lot more damage. And that's something that I'm really kind of like passionate about with this champion, and the potential, you know, extra damage that he can do. So positive news for that. Right, I think that's going to be it for the video. Thank you everyone ever so much for watching. As I said, a little bit of a reminder on the subject of the keys, that we have got an issue at the moment with them, and Kabam have said they found the source of the issue and will be sending out lost keys to impacted accounts. The timeline is not immediate. It looks like the keys will be distributed towards the end of the current event timer, which is not great. It does mean a lot of rush for players to get this done. Hopefully Kabam can sort it out sooner, as it's pretty scary, but that's it. Great news as well on the champions, that they're not changing, where both seem fine, and of course the buff that's coming for Mr. Sinister, which I'm very excited about. Thanks for watching this video, Have a lovely weekend. Check out some other content located on the screen. I'll see you all soon. Much love and goodbye.